Jemima stood dumbfounded as Harriet jotted something down onto a piece of paper. "You ever need a sitter, you just call Okies Han," she said, and handed her the paper and pinched the stunned girl's cheek before running off, shouting, "Bye baby," as she faded out of sight. Jemima sat down on her bed, the paper Harriet had given her sitting in front of her. "Adult baby, what's that?" she asked herself. Jemima set the paper on her nightstand and opened her laptop. She typed in "adult baby" into the search box and opened the first page that came up. Her eyes went wide as she looked at pictures of adults dressed like babies and playing like babies. Lit by the glow of the laptop monitor, Jemima's life changed forever. Why is it that simple correlations are the hardest to make? I've always thought that my incontinence made me like a baby, but never would have imagined that wearing diapers could literally make me into a baby. I guess it's hardwired into certain people's brains or something, that you can take something like wearing a diaper and turn it into a lifestyle. I'm left to wonder though, if certain people are wired like that for life as some claim to be, can someone become that way after the fact? "Hello, Earth calling Jemima." Kim's voice came from somewhere nearby. Jemima turned her head and dumbly looked at her friend. "Huh?" she asked. Kim smiled at her friend. "Welcome back, did you have a nice trip?" Kim asked jokingly. Jemima got a confused look on her face and said nothing. Kim shook her head. "You were like a million miles away there for a minute." "I asked you what movie you wanted to watch," she said with a smile. "I'm sorry, I've got a lot of stuff on my mind right now." Jemima apologized. Kim nodded. "I can imagine that being a superhero can come with a lot of burdens," she said, placing a reassuring hand on Jemima's shoulder. Jemima smiled absently and submerged herself in her thoughts again. Unbeknownst to Kim, she wasn't thinking about her life as a crime fighter, far from it actually. She was thinking about what Harriet had said to her a few days prior, and what she'd seen on the internet. Jemima was thinking about how she was going to handle this new turn of events, and what it would mean for her life. "So, is this your regular hangout spot?" a familiar voice asked from behind her. Jemima turned to see Harriet standing in the doorway of the rooftop entrance. She shook her head softly and smiled. "This is where the clockwork attacked and I got my powers," she said thoughtfully. "The whole thing seems like a distant dream, like it happened forever ago," she said, smiling again. Harriet walked over to the edge of the roof and took a seat next to Jemima on the ledge. "So, why the quiet alone?" she asked, looking at Jemima and then down at the ground far below. Jemima shrugged. "I'm still doing a lot of thinking," she said. Harriet scooted closer to Jemima and put an arm around her. "Is this about the other day?" she asked with a smile. Jemima nodded softly and rested her head on Harriet. "I just don't know how I feel about the whole thing," she said after a long pause. Harriet chuckled. "Why do you feel like you have to know?" she asked. It was Jemima's turn to chuckle. "It's kind of a life-altering choice I have to make. I mean, giving into my curiosity and embracing this other lifestyle means giving up the adulthood that I've fought so hard to keep in check despite my handicap. On the other hand, maybe the reason that I've had to fight so hard to be seen and treated like an adult is because I'm not meant to be," she rationalized. Harriet nodded. "Good points, but there's only one problem," she said. Jemima looked up at her. "What's that?" she asked. Harriet looked down at her and smiled. "You're doing all this thinking, and you're not listening to the one thing that matters, your heart," she said. Jemima thought for a moment and nodded. "Maybe you're right, maybe I should just do it. What's the worst that can happen?" she asked. "It could turn out that you don't like it and you move on," Harriet said with a smile. Jemima looked up at Harriet and smiled. "Well, when do we start?" she asked.